Welcome to Who Is, where if you wonder, I answer. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell to get your daily dose every time that I'll upload. And without further ado, because we hate long introduction, let's learn. Who is John George Haigh? John George Haigh, or commonly known as the acid bath murderer, was born on July 24, 1909 at Stamford in Lincolnshire in England. He is an only son and was raised by his two parents, John Robert Haigh, a mining engineer, and Emily Hudson. Both of his parents were part of a conservative Protestant cult named Plymouth Brethren, with strict beliefs and ways of living. Therefore, to avoid that the evil penetrates their household, radio, newspaper, or any entertainment whatsoever was forbidden. He was also forbidden of playing any kind of sport. He didn't have many friends cause his father wouldn't allow him to go play outside or to invite friends to his place. He spent a lot of time stuck between four walls reading the Bible, which was, by the way, the only book authorized. The only joy that he had was music. Indeed, he joined the choir of Wakefield. But all of that was about to change. At school, John was lazy and immature and would only show interest for sciences. Raised into the fearing divine punishment, he sinks into religious hysteria and discovers that his lies would be punished neither by God nor by men. He would then offer his classmates what he was the best at, his forgery talent. This is how his criminal career began. At 17 years old, John leaves school without his graduation and starts working as an apprentice in a motor shop. His co-workers found him strange and secretive. His boss, found him lazy. He would never tell anything about him, his family, or about his social life, only about his passions for cars. He will eventually leave the job 1 year later. He will also do a brief work in the insurance and discover the world of high finance. He then managed to buy his first car, a red Alfa Romeo, but then there was a story about him stealing from the register and in consequence will be fired. Because his salary couldn't fulfill his passion, one day John realized that there was an easier way to make money than to stay for hours behind a desk. And this how his career of swindler began. Using fake names, he built a scam company with two associates. The purpose was to scam their clients by selling cars that John and his associates didn't own. In 1934, John stopped going to the church of his parents and married the July 6, 1934 Beatrice Betty Hammer, a former model who became a waitress. But their marriage ended quickly cause 6 months later, John will be sentenced at 15 months of prison for his scams. After serving his time, the December 8, 1935, he will learn that Betty gave birth to their daughter and led her up to adoption. He will never care nor search to meet his daughter. And about Betty, after being sentenced, he'll never see her again. From the release to his first murder, John will pursue the jobs, the scams, and the prisons. Throwing for the third time in prison and released from it in 1943, he will want to go on with his scams, but realize something. It's his victims that will turn him in and then put to prison. Therefore, his solution to solve that problem is to not let them alive. Already kind of drowned by the blood after some episodes that he had linked to it, he would get interested by a French murderer and scammer named George Alexander Sarret, who was in 1925 throwing the bodies of his victims in acid bath. He decided to do the experience on mouse corpses. When he concluded that nothing was left after 30 minutes, he was pleased by this solution and would go on with it for his victims. Everything started in 1943. John was based at Crawley, where suddenly he bumped into William McSwan, his former boss that he hadn't seen in years. They started to see each other again, and John became quickly jealous of McSwan's wealthy lifestyle. The two decided to have a drink together on September 6th, and during that drink, William will confess about his fear of being called out to the war. John immediately thought that it was his opportunity and offered William to hide in his new shop. Once down to the basement, John stroked William to the head, slit his trot, drank a little bit of his blood, and put his body in an acid bath. John came back 2 days later and after constating that nothing was left, ditched the pond of the bath and the gutters. After killing William, John went to William's parents, who by the way, were very close to their son. He explained them that he found refuge in Scotland to flee the war. But the most important thing is that he told them that William gave him the responsibility to collect property rents. He would even send fake letters from Williams to go on with his plan. But the war coming to an end, William's parents are worried and start to wonder why their son isn't coming home. To put an end to this potential threat, the July 2nd, 1945, John will draw them to his basements by pretending that their son was back and wanted to make them a surprise. In reality, John murdered them by striking them repeatedly to the head. He then drank the blood of the two before throwing them in the acid bath. But John didn't stop there. He'll then go to explain to Mr. and Mrs. McSwan's owner that they left to America and that their letters and pensions should be transmitted to him. He sold as well the properties of Williams for a total amount of £8,000. But quickly he started to run out of money and therefore needed to find his next victim. His next victims were a married couple from the upper middle class, named Archibald and Rose Henderson. He approached them by feigning his interest for the sale of their house. He didn't buy the house, but they all became friends by their common interest for classical music. He will even get invited to their new apartment sometimes to play the piano. He would by the way take advantage to be at their place to steal a revolver from Archibald to use it against them. During the same period, he would rent another local where he would delocalize all of his murder equipment. In February 1948, 5 months after meeting the Hendersons, he invited the husband to his local. Pretending to be an engineer, he would say that he has a new invention to show him. And unfortunately, the February 12, 1948, John shot Archibald in the head. Right after killing the men, he would find Rose to warn her that her husband was not feeling well. Therefore, the poor woman followed John to his basement, and he killed her the same way. He as usual drank a little bit of their blood, and then simply threw their bodies in the acid bath. But this time nothing was left except a foot. Not really caring, John will still throw the remains of the bath in a corner in his yard. He wrote a lot of letters to their name, to their close ones, and draw £8,000 of the selling of their belongings. His last victim was an old widow named Olive Durand Deacon. The woman was staying at the same hotel of John. He invited her to study her nail project in his local. He would then shoot her in the neck with the same revolver that he killed the Hendersons. He stole all the belongings that she had on her, drank her blood, and threw her body in his acid tank. Having an expensive fur coat on her, he decided to send it to the cleaner to sell it back after. Thinking that he could go on with his life like previously, it wasn't counting on the dear friend of Olive, Constance Lane. Constance, worried about her friend, would ask about her to John, knowing that they had a meeting together. He would say that she never showed up. Constance would then report the missing of Olive to the police. They would do some research at the hotel where John and Olive were staying. The director of the hotel did an unflattering description of John. Therefore, the police would then do some digging and discover the history of scams of John Haigh. They decided to do a search in his local and found a lot, especially papers, a marriage certificate, several passports, ID cards, driver's licenses, and a dry cleaning ticket for an Astrakhan coat. They also found a recently used .38 caliber revolver, and 8 rounds of ammunition were hidden at the bottom of the hatbox. He would finally be arrested after that. The pawn shop owner, where he dropped the jewelry of Olive on a fake name, recognized him in the newspaper. He confessed all of the murderers. During his trial, he tried to plead mental insanity, but was rejected. Even though the absence of the bodies, there was enough evidence for John Haigh to be recognized guilty and charged with the death penalty. He would then be hanged the August 10, 1949. He never showed the slightest remorse. Now you know, who is John George Haigh? If you liked this video, don't forget to comment, share and subscribe. And for my part, I will see you in another episode of Who Is.